Welcome to Flipping the Table's third podcast from the 2026 Old Salt Festival. Michael speaks with two amazing women ranchers who collaborate to deeply care for the ranches they manage to finish cattle for the Cowgirl's Meat Company's customers, who want meat that is healthy for their families and good for the animals and the earth. Theirs is an inspiring story of a successful partnership based on shared values and good business practices. Enjoy the show.
The Old Salt Festival is filled with inspiring talks by farmers and ranchers that have literally moved me to joyful tears. Jaimie Stoltzfus and Amber Smith made one of those heart-filling talks on the first afternoon of the three-day event. I was moved to have them join me on Flipping the Table for a couple of reasons. First, I have long been searching to find and share stories of how ranchers can collaborate by moving animals from one ranch to another to optimize raising cattle to completion on grass. This is important because most ranches in the U.S., particularly in the West, are cow-calf operations that only raise cattle for the first 10 months before they enter the industrial meat system, where they are sent to a feedlot to be fed corn and other grains to achieve their final weight before they are slaughtered, butchered, and boxed for shipment to wholesale distributors and retail grocery chains. That system maximizes profits for the industrial meat companies, but leaves only a small margin for the ranchers who must steward their lands. The industrial approach often results in many negative consequences for the land, particularly in the Midwest, and for cattle and ranching families. Jaimie and Amber avoid these problems through their cooperation. Second, they both took non-traditional paths into the ranching life. They struggled to achieve their dreams, including overcoming the traditions that often dissuade women from leadership roles in the ranching world. Their stories of how motherhood has influenced their work is also very inspiring. They came to their careers and promotion of women in ranching based on deeply held stewardship and family values and a large measure of true grit. So Amber and her husband operate Antelope Springs Ranch in the sagebrush and sandstone plains of northeast Montana, where they run a cow-calf operation that sends mother cows with calves to Jaimie and her husband on the P-Bar Ranch along the banks of the Boulder River in Sweetgrass County, Montana. The P-Bar's lush summer grasses allow them to fatten and finish cattle to create excellent quality beef and tallow products that sell out annually. What makes this story compelling is how deeply these two young women thought and talked through their shared ecological and business goals to craft a collaborative business model that has brought meaning and financial success to their lives. So there's much more to be learned in our great conversation. Let's begin. Jaimie and Amber, really excited to have you join us here for Flipping the Table at Old Salt Festival. We're going to hear all about your very interesting partnership in the cattle business. So first of all, why did you two come?
Well, Old Salt, I feel, so I've known Cole a bit, and I just love what the mission is of Old Salt. It just aligns with so much of what we're doing on the ranch that we're on.
Which is where?
In McLeod, Montana, so we're south of Big Timber, kind of southwest Montana, on the P-Bar Ranch. And so I love coming to Old Salt because it's a bunch of like-minded people that care about the land, that care about food, that care about all the things I care about. And we get to see friends and meet new people. And so it's just a great place to be. So I always love coming.
Great. How about you, Em?
You know, the community, these rural communities need people showing up and being excited about food. And so the families who have put this together are opening their ranch, their land, their hearts, their homes, their work to all of us. And so it's a perfect opportunity to show up and celebrate what these landscapes and what these people and what these communities have to offer.
Mm-hmm. That's nice you said. Amber, where are you located? Where's your ranch?
So we ranch north of Miles City, Montana, the bucking horse capital of the world.
The bucking horse capital of the world. I like that. And so the two of you collaborate on raising cattle and finishing cattle for your brand. You want to talk about your brand?
Yes, I started Cowgirl Meat Company. That's our meat label back in 2014. And so we're a direct-to-consumer business.
12 years now.
Yes, it's hard to believe. I really had to think about that. It's
That's saying
been
something.
that long. I know.
That's saying something.
We're really gritty hanging in there
Yeah,
on
I'll say, yeah.
the direct-to-consumer business. And so we do grass-finished beef, and then we also have some pork as well.
Okay, great. And do you raise the pork on your property? Or
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, good. So one of the things that you talked about in the early, when I saw you guys speak earlier, which your story's really from origins as horsewomen, and then your journeys to ranches and your struggles to get your own ranches or the ranches that you operate. That was all beautiful. And so I want to really focus a little bit more on the business. So you have a brand, but you have two different very kind of different landscapes and different types of ranches. So why don't you describe that and why it works so well to work together?
So our work at Antelope Springs Ranch, we use holistic planned grazing. So we're managing our livestock, moving them across the landscape in a way that benefits the plants and the ecosystem.
And describe your ecosystem, because it's very different from...
Yes, so we are short grass, sagebrush steppe. We're
like over here, like up on that hill.
Yes, our hills are smaller with big sandstone, rocky outcroppings. It's beautiful and open and no trees.
Sage grouse?
Yes, sage grouse,
right.
pronghorn antelope,
Nice.
mule deer. That's who makes their homes at Antelope Springs.
That's beautiful. And but it gets cold in the winter.
It does. I heard a song yesterday. There's not much great about 40 below. It can be cold, but we also get those winds that blow the snow off. It keeps the grazing open. So economically, we can raise a calf and we can run a mother cow about as cheap as anyone can do it.
That's fantastic. Okay, so that brings us to you, Jaimie.
Right. So we're the opposite a bit. I mean, very aligned in the values of how we steward the land with regenerative practices and holistic management. We have a lot of snow and we're higher elevation. We have trees and mountains and grizzly bears and mountain lions. And we have a high input cost to run cows, particularly in the winter, and calf. So that
You would have to feed them in the winter.
We have to feed them a lot in the
which
winter.
is really expensive, particularly right now.
Especially
Crazy,
right now.
insane.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was about 5 years ago, we were meeting with the ranch owners and just kind of where do we want to go, what makes sense. And it really stemmed from what do we want to do for the land? What are our land goals? What do we want to steward here? Because we see cattle as a way and a resource to do that, right? How the land responds to that and what we can do with grazing. And we can do so much with grazing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just was pretty clear that it makes sense to move away from a cow-calf operation because it was one of those things was like, it worked, we could make it work, but it wasn't natural for that ground. It wasn't natural for the landscape. And so we moved away from that and, we're looking at more of just let's run yearlings. What our strength is we're in Sweetgrass County and we have great grass.
Sweetgrass County.
Yes.
So that tells you something right there.
Exactly. And it's true. It has its name for a reason. And so we can finish cattle really well. We're summer country, is how I would say that. And so that led to, we still want to raise beef. We still want to have some cattle, like what fits into our other goals, right, on the beef side. And so it's like, it makes sense to go buy calves. But we didn't want to just go buy calves from a sale barn that were different every year. Who knows what the background was. We wanted to find a partner that was really aligned in values, how they run cattle, how they care about the land, all the things of like how we would do it, but at a different landscape. And Trevor and Amber were the first ones that popped into our minds and our first phone call. And so that's how it started. And they were very open-minded about it, which I think is a huge
Was that 12 years ago? Was that 12 years ago?
No, this was about 5 years ago.
5 years ago. Okay, so you were doing it on your own for a long time.
We were doing it on our own.
Okay,
yeah,
I got
the
it.
ranch was doing it on their own for a while with the cow and calf. So anyway, I think that's pretty noteworthy, though, that Trevor and Amber were open-minded to have the conversation because I think that's where it starts on something like this.
Did you want to add something? Because I have a question, but go ahead.
Right. So I was going to say, when we talk about partnerships, like each of us is managing a different stage of the process, and there's financial exchange happening. So, because I think sometimes what happens is people get into these, like, we have this dream and this vision, and we're aligned and we're going to try it. And then there's no financial planning on that. And then after a few years, people let it
Fades.
go because it didn't make economic sense.
Right.
And so we're paying a custom grazing rate for our whole group of heifers that head to P-Bar Ranch. And then Jaimie and Austin are purchasing the 40 that they're going to finish. So we have those clear definition of roles, who's playing what part, who has the liability and the ownership at different parts. And those were big conversations.
Yeah, that would be really important to make the business work.
Right, for both parties with each of our goals in mind, but also the shared goal. And understanding we do have a lot of shared values and we care about what we do. And so that part, but yeah, it has to work for both parties. It has to work for both landscapes. And so, just figuring that out is important. So it's sustainable, to Amber's point. Like, it has to be sustainable and make sense and to be really clear.
Well, the thing that struck me about both of you is that you didn't come from where you've ended up. You had long journeys you were in the Midwest, you grew up in Arizona, and you left the world you were in, and then you discovered your way to the world you live in now. I have noticed a lot in the world of regenerative ranching and kind of these new operations that people come, they have kind of broken out of the traditions. You guys talked a lot in your earlier conversations about the expectations that are often laid on ranch kids, or even I was raised to be a certain way, which I didn't end up doing. But I mean, we all kind of get something from our parents. But that's a really important point, I think, about what's emerging in agriculture is like new thinking, breaking the bounds. What do you two think about that?
I mean, I think it's important and it's happening more and more. And I think it's because there are people coming into agriculture that did not grow up ranching. And so I can resonate with that, because I didn't have any perspective or preconceived notions. I didn't know what my grandfather did, forever on a ranch. I didn't come from a ranch. And so what I first saw that as a weakness, because I didn't know as much, now I see as a strength, because it led to ideas like this of like, well, that doesn't really make sense. Why are we doing that? I was actually a catalyst for bringing that conversation, because I didn't have, I was less rigid in how it was supposed to be, because I didn't know how it was supposed to be. So just almost like from the outside
mind.
Looking in of like, well, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Why do you do it that way? Down to how you're handling cattle or forcing this is like, that doesn't make sense to me, yet everyone is doing it, right? So I just kind of naturally had a more, I don't want to say open mind, but just the openness to be thinking about it, because I didn't have anything ingrained in me. And so I think that's a strength, especially as people that aren't growing up ranching or farming coming into agriculture. They bring a very unique perspective to help challenge some of the ways it's always been done. And some of those ways it's always been done are good. They're there for a reason, right? And some maybe don't make sense anymore, right? So I think I think it's great to have all those perspectives. And I love tradition as well. I am all about the heritage and the ranching tradition. So much of what I'm involved with the Cowgirl is preserving that, right? So I think it's holding both and all for, the betterment of our industry.
Well, what's interesting is that as you were speaking, I was thinking about Cole. So Cole grew up here on Mannix Ranch, but he left for a long time and then came back. And he came back with a new perspective, and he ended up doing what he's doing, which is leveraging or utilizing the tradition, but also building out new things because of it. Yeah.
And if he was mired in the day-to-day work of ranching, he would have never had the mental capacity to do this other side, right? To put together this festival, to put together a meat company, to put up a restaurant in Helena.
Which is great, by the way. I love that place.
Yeah. So good.
So just because Cole's not currently the day-to-day, he's bringing tremendous value back to this ranch.
So before we end, it would be interesting to hear about what you're doing to promote women in ranching, because I was touched by a couple things in your earlier talk. One, what being a mother has done for you in terms of how you treat animals. I thought that was really interesting, your perspective on animals. And you used a term which I really appreciated, which was this indigenous value set or indigenous sensibility, which I see a lot in regenerative ranchers now. They're really embracing what Native Americans had and what we've always honored about them, right? So that was interesting, but I'm also curious about what you're doing to stimulate more women in agriculture, in ranching, who might share similar feelings.
So women have always been, in all cultures, in all times in history, have always been the backbone of work on the land. And at least in this time, in this culture, that story has not been brought forward. And so there's different aspects through an organization I run called Women in Ranching.
I like your hat.
Thank you. We're a nonprofit organization. Part of that is giving women that space to talk about their work, their experiences, their knowledge, their expertise. It's also creating opportunities for ongoing education, whether that's financial education, succession planning education, stock and horsemanship education, in a space led by other women, with other women, so they have that confidence to ask the questions they want to ask, to show up and really try and not feel
Inhibited.
like they're trying to prove something to someone other than themselves.
Right, okay.
And they're here, so why not invest in them, and why not believe in them, and why not see what happens with their approach?
I like that.
I agree with Amber. I think, so much women have been part of agriculture in a very big way, a part of our society and history in a very big way, and aren't always talked about or showcased. And so I run Art of the Cowgirl Foundation, and similar in the way of just kind of really showcasing women in the Western space and also preserving the knowledge. So we have a fellowship program where we take master artists, and that could be from horsemanship to saddle makers to hat makers to boot makers to leather workers to fine artists, right? Like, art of the cowgirl is broad for us. But it's really just putting the women that may be on these ranches that no one's heard about, that are so talented, have so much to offer with their knowledge, and putting them in a space where we can learn from that, and then they can share that to pour into the next generation, because I do think it's so important that the knowledge and these trades are passed along and not lost. And so I care very deeply about that aspect. And then, I think thinking of that for my kids, right? Like, that's so important. And I think more and more so in a digital age and AI, we want to grab onto something real. And I see that in my kids' generation. I see that in my generation, right? Where we are going to be balancing both. It's the world we live in, but the connection with people and the connection to land. And I think the Western industry and ranching and farming just embody that, and always has. And so I think there's just a bigger space to share that to everybody. And I think people are hungry for it, quite frankly.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And I'm curious, Ash Hansen, do you both know Ash? She was okay. And she has this organization called the Department of Transformation, which basically promotes the arts in rural lands. And I just wondered we're going to do a podcast with her tomorrow. And they were here last year. And as you were talking, I was like, oh, wow, they might know each other, but I guess
Well,
not.
I just met her.
Oh, okay.
And we definitely needed to know each other.
Okay,
so,
good.
See, Old Salt, bring people and you meet
yeah.
people, and great things ripple
A
from
lot
it.
of wonderful weavings happening here. So anyway, I just want to say you guys are amazing. I really appreciated hearing your story today. I wish you all the luck in the world, and I thank you for spending some time with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed Michael's conversation with Jaimie and Amber. To learn more about their interesting journeys from their non-ranching childhoods to Cowgirl Meat Company, watch for Roots of Change social media posts. We'll share the link to the Reframing Rural podcast they did with Megan Torgerson, which moved Michael to invite them to talk on Flipping the Table. Hosted by Roots of Change, a program of the Public Health Institute, a non-profit organization dedicated to building a healthier world.